It started with a warning, a single post from Prince that read like a riddle, just when you thought you were safe. To most people, it was poetic, another cryptic message from an artist known for mystery. But to those close to him, it sounded like a final alarm. Because 6 days later, Prince was gone. What no one knew at the time was that the message wasn't random. It was tied to something much deeper, a fight that had started long before his death, a fight over ownership, power, and the truth about one of the biggest names in music, Jay-Z. Before his final days, Prince was doing what he always did best, standing up for artists. Since the 1990s, he'd been vocal about the ugly side of the industry, painting the word slave across his face and walking away from the label system entirely. He built his own studio, owned his masters, and warned young artists not to fall for contracts designed to trap them. So when Jay-Z launched Tidal, a streaming platform claiming to empower creators, Prince saw it as hope, maybe a chance to finally see musicians get what they deserved. At first, Prince was all in. In 2015, he publicly praised Jay-Z, saying Tidal understood the struggle of real musicians. He pulled his music from most other streaming services and gave Tidal exclusive rights to one of his albums. But behind that public alliance, things were shifting. People in Prince's circle say he started noticing strange uploads, songs that weren't part of the agreement suddenly appearing on Tidal. Entire parts of his catalog were being streamed without permission. Prince was furious. He felt betrayed, manipulated, and boxed in by the same kind of corporate behavior he had fought against his whole life. As the months went on, he started asking questions. He wanted to see the contracts. He wanted proof that the paperwork was legitimate. That's when the story turns dark, because what Prince reportedly discovered didn't make sense. The documents Tidal claimed he had signed were dated months before he'd even spoken to them about a deal. His representative at the time, Fedra Ellis-Lampkins, told investigators her emails and records didn't match the version Tidal showed the court. The dates were off, the signatures didn't line up, and the entire agreement looked like it had been written after the fact, backdated to look real. If that allegation is true, it means something serious. The ownership rights Jay-Z's company claimed might have been based on forged contracts. It also means that one of the world's most respected artists, who fought harder than anyone for control of his work, may have been taken advantage of in death. When the Prince estate filed court documents in 2024, they described what they found not as a simple dispute, but as a criminal pattern, a network of forged deals and manipulated contracts reaching straight into the heart of Jay-Z's empire. But this wasn't just about one artist. It was about power. In the world of streaming, controlling a legendary catalog is like owning a gold mine. Prince's vault contains thousands of unreleased songs, enough to generate revenue for decades. Whoever holds those rights doesn't just make money, they hold influence. And if the estate's claims are correct, that's exactly what someone was trying to secure. The lawsuit laid out disturbing details. The supposed equity term sheet the contract Tidal said gave them permanent control over hundreds of Prince's recordings didn't match any verified correspondence from Prince's team. Emails, phone records, and legal drafts from the time showed no sign of the document's existence until after his death. The estate called it a fabrication, and when they asked Tidal to produce the original version, the company refused, citing something called the common interest doctrine, a legal protection usually used by defendants sharing a joint defense, not a commercial partnership. It was a wall of secrecy. That wall made everyone suspicious. Why hide behind a legal loophole if the paperwork was clean? What were they protecting? To Prince's longtime lawyer, Lundell MC Millen, it was obvious. He told reporters that Jay-Z's team was trying to rewrite history, to make it seem like Prince had willingly handed over control when he never did. MC Millen reminded everyone that he was the one who helped Prince fight the record labels in the first place. He knew exactly what the artist stood for. To him, the idea that Prince would suddenly give away his life's work made no sense at all. But Jay-Z's side told a different story. He claimed that he and Prince had spoken directly, that they saw eye to eye, and that Prince personally wanted Tidal to have his music. In 2017, he released a track called Caught Their Eyes, where he hinted that the estate was greedy and that outsiders were twisting the truth. It sounded like a defense, but to those who had worked with Prince, it sounded like a calculated move to control the narrative. The timing was no coincidence. The song dropped right as the estate's lawsuit began to gain traction. It was public relations disguised as tribute. Things only got stranger from there. Not long after the estate reportedly recovered emails proving that Tidal's documents were altered, their servers were hacked. Years of correspondence vanished overnight, including attachments that were supposed to be reviewed by court experts. The breach came the same week that Roc Nation's lawyers filed motions to block further document requests. The timing was too perfect to ignore. Investigators never identified who was behind the hack, and yet this wasn't the only red flag. Over the next few years, other estates, smaller ones representing lesser-known R&B and soul artists, started noticing similar issues. Contracts that didn't match the originals, signatures that looked copied, deals that suddenly gave streaming control to the same company. Each time someone tried to push back, they ran into the same legal roadblock, that same common interest clause. It was as if someone had designed an entire system to keep the truth buried. People in the industry began whispering that this wasn't a coincidence. They said it was a blueprint, a way to quietly take over catalogs from deceased or inactive artists, repackage the deals as exclusive partnerships, and cash in while the families struggled to fight back. The public never heard about most of these cases because they rarely reached court. When estates ran out of money or got scared of legal costs, the stories died quietly, and when journalists tried to cover them, the sources dried up. For Jay-Z, the timing couldn't have been worse. His image as a billionaire mogul fighting for artists' independence was part of his brand. Tidal was supposed to be the platform that protected musicians from corporate greed. But now the same company was being accused of exactly what it claimed to oppose: manipulation, deception, and theft of creative control. Meanwhile, people close to Prince remembered how he'd been acting in his final weeks. He had canceled appearances, changed his security system, and told friends he didn't trust anyone. He started talking about energy vampires, about forces trying to drain his creativity. To outsiders, it sounded like paranoia. But to those who knew what was happening behind the scenes, it sounded like fear, the kind of fear that comes from realizing you've uncovered something you weren't supposed to. And then came that final post. Just when you thought you were safe. 6 days later, he was gone. Officially, it was ruled an accident. But even today, many of his friends don't believe it. They say he knew too much, that he had seen behind the curtain, and that his warnings weren't symbolic, they were literal. After his death, Tidal immediately began streaming his entire catalog, not just the album he'd agreed to share, but hundreds of songs from his vault. The estate said they never gave permission. Jay-Z's team said they had the paperwork. The public, caught in the middle, saw only the surface, one superstar honoring another. What they didn't see was the chaos happening behind closed doors. As the years passed, the legal battle grew quieter. Some witnesses pulled away. Others refused to talk. The media moved on. But in July 2024, the story resurfaced. The estate filed new documents accusing Tidal and Roc Nation of backdating contracts, forging signatures, and withholding internal emails that could expose the truth. The evidence was still incomplete, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. Each missing email, each sealed file, pointed to the same question: who actually signed those papers? Jay-Z and Beyoncé's combined empire depends heavily on their music rights and streaming network. If those contracts were ever proven fake, it could unravel everything. Some insiders believe that's why so much effort has been made to keep the records hidden. Others think it's about something even bigger, maintaining control over legacies that generate billions long after the artists are gone. And that's where this story stops being just about Prince. Because now, every time another estate reports missing paperwork or questionable streaming deals, the same whispers surface. The same names. The same silence. The same legal phrases. Prince may have been the one who saw it first, but he wasn't the last. Maybe his death wasn't a conspiracy. Maybe it really was a tragic accident. But when you connect all the dots, the timing, the documents, the hacks, the secrecy, it's hard not to wonder. Did he die knowing he'd uncovered something too dangerous to reveal? Or was he silenced by the very system he spent his life trying to expose? What we know is that his warning still echoes. He told fans to stay awake, to question the people who claimed to fight for them. And maybe that's what this whole story really comes down to, not just who owns the music, but who owns the truth. So what do you think? Was this a coincidence or the cost of challenging power? One thing's certain. In the music business, silence always means more than it seems. Stay curious. Stay awake, because somewhere in those missing files, Prince's real story might still be waiting to be heard.